Hi guys, and welcome to this week's episode of the Kickstarter Diaries, the sub-channel within our channel ThinkerThemer where I get to justify all of my purchases. And I'm a big believer that a problem shared is a problem halved, so that's my philosophy with this channel. Let me tell you about all the things that I'm buying, the things that I'm excited about on Kickstarter, and the things that I think other people might be excited about even if I'm not. And this week, wow, this week is a huge week. It's the week commencing the 21st of September, which also happens to coincide with my birthday. And Kickstarter celebrated my birthday by launching a whole heap of projects, which is really exciting. But I have to say that this week is really for the cooperative gamers out there. I'm not one of them. I love a competitive game. The more competitive, the better. But I know that there's a huge fan base of cooperative games, and I think it's really important to highlight these games, particularly at a time during COVID. There's a lot of other things going on in the world. That means that you might not be able to get together with your game group as much anymore. And so it's really important that we have stories and experiences that can be enjoyed by, solo gamers or also just, groups of two. And cooperative games tend to do a much better job of that. So I'm excited to share some of those with you today. I've been having all sorts of tech problems today. I'm not wearing my headphones. Everything's going crazy, and so I'm just going to try and share my screen and hopefully we can bring it all together. What I want to start with is the seventh Citadel. Now, I spoke about this last week. It is the spiritual sequel to the Seventh Continent. It is a completely separate story, but it's built on the same premise of having a campaign style, choose your own adventure, cooperative game experience. And for me, I've backed this game and it's a cooperative game. I've absolutely bought into the hype. The last game, Seventh Continent, was really hard to find. It was super expensive in the after sales kind of market because once people loved the game, there was way too much demand for supply. People were paying ludicrous amounts for the original Kickstarter version. So I am all in on this hype. I am buying this game. I'm taking my opportunity to get it. And I think that, it reminds me a bit of in the 90s when you choose your own adventure novels and you would earmark the page, and if you didn't really like the outcome of your decisions, you'd go back and try and play out the alternative story. That was a lot of fun, and this reminds me of that. I think that Maggie will be much more into this as a lover of story and a lover of solo game experiences. But I'm really keen to play this with her. You are, making decisions along the way about when you're exploring this world that they've created. And based on your decisions, you'll be pulling out different numbered cards from this deck, which then helps to push forward the story. Another interesting part about this game is that there's going to be NPCs or non-player characters which you can engage in dialogue with. So similar to an RPG, I'm reminded of all my times with Final Fantasy where you're bumping into characters and you can choose what you say to them, and there'll be a book of dialogue where, again, based on what you choose to say to them, it will kind of send you down a different story path. You'll be selecting different cards again and continuing on with your story. I feel like there's a lot of value here in terms of the number of hours that could be sunk into a game like this. And I'm sure, as they did with the Seventh Continent, as this campaign goes on, more and more will be unlocked in terms of, different expansions and goodies. So I'm excited to follow along with this. One thing to note is the delivery date of this is May 2022, which, we're still in lockdown, and thinking about anything beyond today is it's hard to think about what the world will look like. But in 2022, that's even further away, and who knows where we'll be. But, the other part of that is it's a long way away, but there are things that I've backed almost 2 years ago that are only now being delivered. And so I think it's good to have a realistic timeline. It's better to be upfront about how long these things are going to take to develop than to overpromise and underdeliver. So I'm excited about May 2022 and playing along as the rest of the board gaming community is playing this game, and I'm really excited to be kind of involved this time in that process. So that was an instant back for me. Now, the next game that I instantly backed this week was Crash Octopus. And if you watched my diary from last week, this is a game that I came across randomly on Kickstarter, and it was the components that really drew me into this. It's a dexterity game, which is definitely not my thing, but I am a big fan of games that bring people to the table, that get a little bit of excitement just because of the way, that it appears, and getting people involved in gaming that wouldn't normally be involved. And I have also studied Japanese for most of my life, and so anything coming out of Japan is of interest to me. And this game is super, super cute. At the center of it is this giant octopus with his head and his tentacles, as you can see here. And during the game, the way the game works is that everyone has a ship and a flag, and there are all these different components that are scattered in around the game board. The game looks like this when it's set up. I think it's really clever that they've included this rope which defines the play board and the play area. And then there's a little crab, and every round he's moving along, and when there's a black little bead that it comes across, a certain event is triggered. And so what you're doing throughout the game is you are using your flag to flick pieces so that they hit your ship. And when they do hit your ship, they become cargo, you load them on, and it's very precarious because you're trying to fit all of the pieces onto your little ship. And when the little crab gets to the black marker, someone gets to drop the die on top of the head of the octopus, and then if it lands a certain way, you get the opportunity to move the head of the octopus closer to someone else's ship and drop the die again and hopefully knock their ship over and all of their stuff. So it is a competitive game. It seems simple. I think that one question I have is the replayability of this style of game. But I also teach games to my work colleagues, and I feel like this would be a fun one to bring along and play in our lunch break. It's not too taxing, because we're all working hard when we're not gaming, and so it would just be a nice, fun, light game. I've backed this. I will probably keep my back on this, but I'll certainly update you if I decide to drop out. But I am excited to see what they unlock along the way. Now, the next game is one that I am uncertain about, and I mentioned that I was uncertain about this in last week's diary, but now that I've seen it, I am getting closer and closer to backing this game. The game is from Pandasaurus Games. It's Dinosaur World. It's almost a sequel to Dinosaur Island. My understanding, I haven't played Dinosaur Island, but my understanding is that they've further refined the gameplay. This one adds in more complexity than the previous titles. And so of course that's going to pique my interest because I like more complex games. And what I really love about this game, and now that I've seen the campaign, the pieces and the components are really eye-catching, and they're very well made. Pandasaurus Games has done a great job here in terms of having nice thick cardboard tiles which are beautifully illustrated. There's these little Jeep tiles, there's the dinosaur tiles, there's dual layered boards to make sure that your tokens are not falling around all over the place. And then then of course the theme is not really our thing, but I feel like we've got friends in our group that might be really attracted to, who are big fans of like Jurassic Park and might be attracted to this game, and it might actually be a bit of a gateway for those people that we know that enjoy board games but are not necessarily into the heavier ones. And I'm always looking for reasons to drag people kicking and screaming into our hobby. So then I was like, well, maybe I'll just back this game because this game seems like one that might get some time on our table. But then the other part of this campaign is the Roar and Write. And because it's called Roar and Write, I had a feeling that it might be for younger kids, or that it might be a simple version of, oh, sorry, I'm going to interrupt myself, but when you back this game, you get this Kickstarter exclusive metal coins, and the metal coins look awesome. And, you know, this is almost a reason for me to back it in and of itself. And, you know, clearly I have a problem. Help me. Anyway, moving on to the roll and write. So the roll and write, or the roll and write version of this game actually looks quite complex. And they even say here, if you're expecting a 20-minute, you know, light filler, then look elsewhere. This is not for you. And when you start to look into the game a bit more, it's dice drafting. You've still got, you know, staff, members of your park. You've still got all the attractions. It looks like you're managing a lot of different things with your choice of die. And for that reason, I'm actually really excited about this, and I'm probably going to end up backing both of these games. But I'm kind of on the fence at the moment. I'm recovering from some big purchases, so we will see, but it's looking likely. The next game is one that is something that I haven't backed. This is where we get to the alter ego part of this channel, where I think that, you know, in a different lifetime, I probably would enjoy this style of gaming. It's just not for Maggie and I. This one in particular, though, I think looks really well put together. It's beautifully illustrated, and I could see that if you were into this theme and you were into co-op games, which we are not really, that this might be something of interest to you. So in Machina Arcana, which is really hard to say, is a game that is horror themed, so that's not really for us. It is also the monsters that you can see here are Cthulhu themed monsters, again, not really our thing. And the third part of this is that there are elements of steampunk. And, you know, so it's really a trifecta of theme elements that are just not what we're into. But I have to give them credit where credit is due, that the illustrations on this are really beautiful and not my thing. But I think that if this is something you are interested in, there's a lot to see here in terms of the board is gorgeous. The standees are really fabulous. And what I think is really interesting about this is this storyboard. And it's beautifully executed, and the way that it works is that the story is kind of revealed, the tiles are moved like a storybook would, and I'm not into story or really theming games. That's much more Maggie's domain, but I think if you're into you know, that kind of campaign and very story heavy gameplay, that, you know, they've done a really beautiful job of bringing that to life here. So that's one to look into. I'm not backing. This is another one that I'm also not backing, Lost to Time. It is a cooperative game again, lots of co-ops this week. But this one is, I think what's most interesting about this game is it's in real time. And of course, you know, we're seeing more real-time games coming into being built into designs, like Pendulum is a recent one by Stonemaier Games. But this Lost to Time introduces this really innovative concept. Everybody is doing their own thing. So you're all obviously trying to achieve the same goals because it's cooperative, but you're under a time limit to do so. And so everyone is like rolling die and trying to implement actions that are going to help the team. But what is, I guess, a little bit controversial and innovative about this game is that at the center of the design is an app. And the hobby, I know that people in the hobby have mixed feelings about apps as a part of games. I have an issue with apps being a part of games. I think that for me, you know, and it is for most people, like getting an analog game out, getting a board game out is a way of putting down your devices. I've got laptops, I've got, you know, phones. I'm constantly on now video chats for work. There is a lot of tech surrounding us, and being able to just take the time out, put our phone away and focus on some gameplay and friends is what I love about board gaming. This kind of game makes everybody get their phones out in order to actually play the game, and for me that's a little bit distracting. However, I think the way that they've implemented it here is really interesting. As you're rolling the die, everyone is under a time limit, but if you roll a certain combination of the die, my understanding is that you can gain extra time. Not extra time for you, but for the group. And the way that you activate that extra time or add it to the group timer is to scan the QR code in the center of the board from the main device with your device. And that instantly adds sand to the timer. It instantly adds time to the game. So that is really cool. And if you're not adverse to having an app at the center of the game, you like co-ops, this might be one to check out, but is not for us. The next game is another co-op, big co-op week. It's called The Thing. And it's based on the movie of the same name from 1982. It is not the first time that that movie has been used as inspiration for a board game. I believe this may even be the third time. But this one is has the namesake, so The Thing, and it's a co-op game which has hidden roles. I haven't seen The Thing. Again, it's just not my kind of genre in board games or otherwise. But the gameplay is 1 to 8, which is difficult to have a game that spans all of those player counts, but also it's useful sometimes to have a game that can stretch up to 8 players. And people are either humans or aliens, I believe, and you're not sure of that, so it's kind of semi-cooperative until people get accused of being aliens and then potentially revealed as being aliens. I think that this would be worth checking out if you enjoy the movie, because my sense of watching the video is that the artwork and the miniatures that are here are very true to the movie. So it looks like they've done quite a good job of taking all of the key elements of the movie and turning that into a board game. But again, we won't be backing. The next game is Cactus Town. This was one that I was anticipating. I was looking forward to checking it out. This is not a cooperative game. This is a competitive game, and it has a really cute Wild West theme. You can see that the characters are very cartoony, and that is what drew me in. I think these are really cute. Now that I'm painting miniatures just as a bit of a side hobby, I could see that these would be really fun to paint. They could be really bright and colorful. The idea behind this game is it's a programming game. So you have a character and there's asymmetric character powers, and you are programming their actions, but you program it in and then it plays out in reverse order, which is an interesting and probably adding a little bit more complexity, which is nice. But in the game description, they do say that this is an introduction to asymmetric player powers, which makes me think that it's more of a gateway game. And then when I looked at the age group of 7+, this to me feels like a nice family style game. Probably too simple for us, but I think if you've got children, I think there's something really nice to be learned from programming style games, because any good strategy game is built on this premise of thinking about the actions that you're going to take and the sequence of those actions. Whether it's a programming game or not, a lot of the time that is what you have to do to win. And I think what is really nice about teaching children to program in games like this is that it's aligned to that way of thinking, and but it steps it out in natural progression, and you can see when you've programmed incorrectly and you see how that plays out. So I think that is a really cool concept. It plays 2 to 4 players. It's a bit light for us. We won't be backing it, but I think it is one to check out for family gameplay. And the next one is Set a Watch, Swords of the Coin. This is a sequel to the original Set a Watch game, but it is both an expansion and I believe a standalone game as well. This, I just wanted to include it in case you were a fan of the original game or you couldn't get your hands on the original game, because my understanding is it was quite popular. For us, this is not the style of game that we're attracted to. Again, it's a cooperative game, but in this case, you're also controlling different characters who all have unique abilities. There's die rolling. I believe there's conflict that you're trying to resolve. Not our thing, but I wanted to draw your attention to it in case you were waiting for this one. And I also understand that there'll be some stretch goals and things to look out for this game. The next game is Hogs of War, the miniatures game. This game is based on a PlayStation game. I am a bit of a I do like video games, but this is one that I haven't played. I believe it's from the 90s, so quite an old game. But I was originally attracted to this board game because of the really cool miniatures. It is a war-themed game, but the fact that they're all hogs is just really cute. Like you see with this blimp and the little, snout. The game is a miniatures game, and so it comes with tons and tons of miniatures, or in Australia we would just say heaps and heaps and heaps of miniatures. And I think it would be a really fun time to paint all of these guys, and they would have such great table presence. But what I wasn't fond of when this campaign launched is that the board is quite sandbox. You put it together with lots of modular terrain, with lots of different, you end up building all of this kind of polyomino tiles on the border as well. And then there's like hidden movement with your different actions that you can do. There's attacking, and they also released like a number of different game modes. So it's competitive, or it's co-op, or it's solo. And it felt overwhelming to me. I couldn't get a sense of what the actual game was about. And sometimes when there's too many choices of variants in the game, it's a bit of a turn-off to me. I like a very clear set of rules. That wouldn't probably come in as a surprise to many people. I like to have, limits and control, and I like to understand what I need to do to win. And when there are even games I love, if they have different variants, I usually will just stick to the one that I believe the designer probably intended for the game. And so for this one, yeah, it's really cute. But I'm probably not going to get into this one, but you might, especially if you enjoyed the video game in the 90s. And now the next game is unfortunately one that was cancelled, but in terms of upcoming games, this is 100% on my radar. I was almost at the point of backing it before they cancelled the campaign. They cancelled it because they had the game is Impression, and they cancelled it because they had a lot of feedback about both the cost of the game and also the fact that it wasn't clear, I think, how the game came together. And those two things combined meant that they were close to funding, but they probably weren't getting the volume that they were expecting. But I was drawn to this game because it looks like a heavy Euro. I was drawn to it by the theme as well. So this game is about printing and paper production and manufacturing, and that sounds so boring to so many people. And I've just said how I'm not into fantasy and horror, and I'm sure that people can't understand why you would be into a game about printing. But for me, I get excited about this, these kind of real world applications of themes. And you can see that there's this really cute conveyor belt system where, at different stages of the production, you've got resources moving along these different steps. The board game itself looks like that there's different parts and placements within the board that look like kind of mini games within games. So I'm excited to learn more about that. They are relaunching next week, which is why I have brought this to everybody's attention. This is on the radar for me for next week. So I'm really excited to check that out. And obviously I'll cover it off when they do relaunch. The next game that's launching next week is Fantastic Factories, the expansion, Manufactions. And I am excited about this because I have had the original base game, Fantastic Factories, on my to-buy list for such a long time, since it launched, essentially. It was brought onto my radar by Rado, who loves the game. Fantastic Factories. I've also purchased I've purchased a promo pack before even getting the game. I don't know how many other people do that, but I was just so sure that I was going to buy it that, in the recent Dice Tower Kickstarter campaign, I definitely wanted to get the limited edition kind of special pack for this, and so I will definitely use this opportunity when it launches next week to get not only the base game but also the expansions. It's an engine builder and it's been really well received by the community, so I'm excited to see what they do next. Now, a couple of other things that I want to draw your attention to this week are that there are 2 late pledges that I think people might be quite interested in. The first one is Planet Unknown. Planet Unknown, for those who aren't familiar with it, is a tile laying game with polyomino tiles, and that is something that Maggie and I really enjoy. And what's unique about this one is that it plays 1 to 6 players, which is great because I'm always looking for a game that can play 6 players. But at the center of this design is this amazing lazy Susan that sits in the middle of the table between all the players and can be spun so that you can take the tile that you need. And it's really funny because just last night, Maggie and I were playing the Magnificent, and we were passing the tray of tiles backwards and forwards to each other because we couldn't quite reach based on how we were sitting at the table. And this solves for that, and it just is also really awesome and innovative, and I love that in a game. And it would mean that 6 people could comfortably sit around these tiles, and you could always have access to the one that you need. The other thing I really love about this game are the player boards. So the player boards, you have 6 unique planets. So each of the planets has different terrain, and which means that your strategy is going to be slightly different depending on the planet that you start with. And that's really cool, especially the fact that there are 6 of them. And so I'm really excited to get this to the table. I did back it originally. They had a deluxe version and a regular version. I believe they have dropped the regular version because so few people chose that because everyone was in on this Lazy Susan design. It will go to retail with a turntable, but it won't be as fancy as this one. So if you're keen to back that, I would get onto that sooner rather than later. It's hopefully shipping soon. And the next late pledge is for Foundations of Rome. Foundations of Rome has been quite controversial because it's a midweight game that includes lots and lots of miniatures, which has bumped up the price of the project. And I don't normally talk about value in my videos, but I think that it comes down to whether you're willing to pay a large amount to have a game that looks great but might not have as much depth as other large euros for around the same price. But there is no doubt that this is an incredible game, and the reason why the late pledge is so important here is because this game's not going to be available at retail. It is a Kickstarter exclusive project. It's by Emerson Matsuuchi, and Emerson is responsible for the recent game Reef, as well as the Century series, so Century Spice Road, which we are a fan of. And this game is a tile laying game, but instead of placing just the boring flat polyomino games, you're actually placing these huge buildings and monuments, and they are stunning. The monument expansion, I mean, if I was in on this, you'd definitely want to include that. I mean, that looks just gorgeous. But the monuments themselves are also really beautiful. And the reason why I haven't backed this game, but I was close to it, is because I would get a lot of joy, I think, out of painting these and then, bringing them out. And when you're playing with them, they would look really great. I haven't backed it because I think the game might be a little too light for us, and I'm worried that it will just take up a lot of shelf space and not get the play that it deserves. You can see here that it does come in a nice little box where you can pull out each of the players' set of buildings quite easily, which I think is a really cool idea. And who knows, I might end up backing this, and I feel like because it's a Kickstarter exclusive, I might be able to just resell it if we don't enjoy it. But yeah, it is one certainly worth considering. And then the next couple of things are, my random Kickstarter projects that are a little bit gaming adjacent. This is not a game, it's an ice tray, but it's an ice tray that creates ice that look like dye, which is really, really cool. It's made by gamers. This is something that I backed immediately. Oh my God, can we just for a second talk about early bird pricing in Kickstarter? It is doing me in. It is just like as if Kickstarter and all of its exclusives weren't bad enough. Now, if I back immediately, I get it at a cheaper price, and I just can't resist that. My poor wallet. Anyway, I backed this, and Maggie was like, what are we going to do with that? But, you know, I think it would be really fun on a gaming night to bring it out for, you know, in the drinks as a bit of a, you know, conversation starter, something just interesting and different. And I really love what they've done with the mold and the way they've been able to create these numbered indents. I think that's really clever, and I just want to support this project. My little brother's really into D&D. I can see him getting this out when he has drinks with his friends and, you know, being, you know, quite fun. And the next project, and the last one I'm going to talk about today, I think I need another coffee, is Mother of Frankenstein. Now, it probably won't come as any surprise to you that Maggie and I are really into escape rooms. So much so that whenever we travel, I think it's a funny concept to travel around the world and then lock yourself in a room for an hour. But we love to do that. We love to meet up with our friends all, you know, in different places around the world and do that together. We love puzzles, and interestingly, you know, an escape room is a cooperative experience, but for some reason, when there's puzzle solving involved, it does still feel kind of competitive that you want to be the one that helps save everybody, that helps get you out of the room. So I really love those experiences. And why I bring that up is because Mother of Frankenstein is essentially an escape room in a box that's lots of puzzles and things to work your way through. I love the theme because it's about the life of Mary Shelley, who is the author of Frankenstein. And it's sequenced, the game is sequenced over a number of playable hours through different levels which represent different parts of her life, or different, I guess, the timeline of her life. But the thing that really drew me into this project, I had no idea it was coming. I did not find this on Kickstarter. I was emailed by Hatch Escapes, who are the publisher of this game. And Hatch Escapes, for those of you who don't know, have quite a famous escape room in Los Angeles that is called the Rat Lab. And in this game, and we played it when we were in LA, you start off as rats that are kind of in an experiment, and you're in a cage and you're trying to escape, you know, to save yourselves. And the thematic environment that they've created at Hatch Escapes is just incredible. They had artists do all of the artwork on the walls. You know, in the cage as a rat, there was, you know, that wheel that you run in. It was really cool, and the puzzles were quite difficult, and we really, really enjoyed it. It would rank in the top escape room experiences that we've ever had, and for that reason, I have no doubt that these guys are going to create an incredible escape room box experience, and it already has signs of, you know, living up to those expectations, because when you read about the components, what's really cool is like there's actually a full 3D castle. So you have to put together this castle puzzle before you can then use it to help unlock or answer other clues. It's my understanding. And it just looks like there's a good mix of like physical puzzles as well as, you know, reading through letters and trying to work out what's going on. So this was an instant back for me. I'm really excited to get this. You're going to get 10 to 15 hours worth of gameplay out of this for, I believe, 10 to 15 hours for 1 to 6 players. That's a lot of value in one box. So super excited about that. And that is everything for this week. Huge, long video. Thanks for sticking with me if you're still here. I would love to know in the comments, what are you backing? What do you think that I should give a go? You know, even if, you know, I'm not a cooperative gamer, but I'd love to know, what are your cooperative games that you would suggest for someone who's into competitive games, and tell me what you're backing this week. Please hit like if you enjoyed this video, subscribe to our channel. We're really new to this and we'd love your feedback to keep doing what we're doing. But otherwise, have a great weekend ahead, trying to decide what you're going to back and where you are going to spend all of that Kickstarter money. Bye for now.